So New Zealand was our training spot for Tarawa. And we did everything imaginable. The jungle training was a waste because there wasn't a tree in sight in Tarawa. It was as flat as a pancake. And we left New Zealand and arrived in Tarawa. And it was quite a thing to go through. It really was.
Now, did they prepare you, the Marines, did they prepare you for what the Japanese were like and how they fought? And did you know much about what had happened at the canal? And how prepared were you to go into battle in that regards?
Wrong. Completely wrong. We had nothing. We were trained in jungles where you couldn't see the hand in front of you, pitch black. And there was this spot 2¼ miles long, 800 yards across wide, and not a tree in sight. And that's part of the reasons that the Marine Corps took such a beating on the beach, because there was no place to hide. Yeah. You just couldn't do it. We had the seawall that was there. When we landed, our LCI lighter landing craft that took us in, we dumped the gun off in the beach, and it was in probably 10 or 20 feet of water. It's never to be seen there. I imagine it's still there. So we got ashore, and we were no longer anti-tank crewmen. We were now plain Joe riflemen. And everybody's seen the pictures of that seawall, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And the stack of bodies that was piled up on that seawall was just incredible. When we landed with with the lighter, and the gun, of course, I said was dumped over the board, and we had to swim a short distance, but it was well over our head, with a full pack and gear. And when we got to the beach, one of our lieutenants says, "Hold that lighter. I'm going to put stretchers on that." And we put in, I want to say, from 6 to 8, laid them out across the deck of that lighter. And I remember the beach master with his megaphone yelling to the coxswain of that vessel, "Okay, you're loaded, get out of here." No answer, no response. He'd been shot right at the wheel of the vehicle.
Hmm.
One of the Seabees that was part of the beach party come running down the beach and up that ramp and onto that lighter, and it took off. And I have no idea if he knew where he was going. I imagine he went out and picked out a ship. There was, many transports in the bay, and I'm sure they took care of him. But it was quite a sight. We stayed on that side of the Red Beach 2. And Red Beach 2 was alongside of this pier. I'm sure you've all seen this pier sticking out on the side of the beach. We went in that beach, and there was probably 100 men in our particular group. And this Lieutenant Shelton gathered up approximately 25 men. And he says, "Guys, we're going to go across the island. We're not going to stay here. This is a killing field. We're not going to make it." So we gathered up 25 guys, and we took off across that airstrip. Of the 25, there was 10 that didn't make it, because it was wide open. Once again, no place to hide.
Yeah.
No place to hide. What you did, you was just hope and pray. And as I've often said, there's no atheists on Tarawa. It just didn't happen. We got to the other side. It was relatively quiet. And it was late in the afternoon. That night we got into a yelling contest with some Japanese. And Betty Grable was a whore. Don't tell us any more about Betty Grable. and was sick and tired of the story on Babe Ruth. Those are lies. He never, and we got into this yelling contest. I don't know how close they were, but it was within yelling distance of each other. The next thing I know, this platoon sergeant Hop came down and grabbed us by the neck. Knock it off. They're going to know exactly where we are. You guys are fools. So once again, Hop did his thing, and his purpose was to keep us alive, and he did. After we got to the other side, some of us back on Red Beach 1 were missing in action. They didn't even know that we'd gone there. But we did. There was 15 of us. Had a fellow from upstate New York in Albany. Had another one up in Watertown, New York that was with us. Earl Nelson from California. Guy by the name of Brewer from South Carolina. And we survived. We survived. They kept, the next morning they sent people over to help us to try to build that side of it up. And their percentage of guys that got across was even less. I would say there was probably 30 of them that attempted to come over, and I'd say less than half made it.
What was the terrain like on the other side? Were you dug into foxholes, or what?
No,
how were you?
No, perfectly flat, just as flat as your kitchen table. You know, if you could look from one side of that island to the other and see a bump or a rock or anything. You could make out a human being, and the Japs did. I mean, they had it their way, and we were just trying to tag along until we got them in a position where we could be lost. But it took a while. It really did. One of the replacements come over and jumped in a dugout section that I had dug on the beach, on Black Beach. It was on the opposite side. And never knew his name. We chatted for less than 5 minutes, and he took a sniper's bullet. I never even did find his name. He died within 6 inches of me. But that was what Tarawa was like. We lost 30 troops an hour for the first 30 hours. Totals in the KIAs were, oh boy, what was it, around 1,600. And the WIAs were somewhere around 2,500. But you have to remember, it all took place in 48 hours.
Wow.
So it was a massive killing field, as they put it. They took us off Tarawa the day before Thanksgiving. And put us aboard ship. And they had a combined church service. It's not a religious guy by any means, but I was that day, I'll tell you. And the church service was interrupted several times by the sea burials. Let's see if I can go back and put a name on that ship. What in Typhoon, Rochambeau, Fielding's Island was the Biddle. And the Biddle was burying 10 or 20 an hour. And the only interruption was our church service, and the burials continued. Taps was just a continuous thing with, they had these slabs and they'd put 4 or so bodies on that and dump them overboard. And I was glad to see Tarawa go the other way. It wasn't an easy campaign by any means. But
Let me interrupt if I can and ask you what you were feeling in that 48 hours from, you said you were talking earlier, you said you'd been in four campaigns, so this was your first one. What were you thinking as you were taking that, what was going through your mind as you were going in that landing craft up to the battle? What was it like for that 48 hours? And then once you're back on ship and out of harm's way, what was it like? Were you able to decompress? And once you realized what you'd been through, how was that transition?
You know, it's interesting you should say that, because while you're doing it, while you're in that environment, I don't want to say you're unconscious, but you're not with it. It's really not real. It's something you're imagining. Later on, back in the ship, you know, you gave it a lot of thought, and many a tear was shed, because you say to yourself, how could that be? How could they lose that many people that quick? And I was probably, from the first wave that went ashore in Tarawa, I probably was, well, we were supposed to have been, with the anti-tank guns, we were supposed to have been fourth. We lost the guns, so it ended up by us being third. So the first three groups were just slaughtered. Just bodies stacked, just like you'd stack cardwood in your backyard. It was just an incredible sight. And I've seen that pier, and I've seen that Red Beach too, on many photographs and stuff, and I could trace out the exact route we take to the letter. You know.
Wow.
But it seems unreal. You do it at the time, but you do it, how do I say it? You're in another world, I guess. It's just not there. Got us aboard ship, and they took us back to Pearl.